Going onto the ice at Summerlin Hospital Rink at City National Arena, Day 6 of Golden Knights Training Camp 2.0. This is a transitional day in the return to day play calendar. This morning's practice marks the completion of opening week of Phase 3, and we are now officially 1 week away from the Golden Knights' arrival in Edmonton and that secured environment and the hub city. Welcome into Studio 31 for this live stream on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm Darren Millard along with Stormy Bonatoni, radio play-by-play voice. Dan Duva will be here in person, so you hear the voice, you'll also see him, and we may, if we can, and we time it perfectly, get a scrimmage with Dan in the chair with the microphone, call some of the action for you today. So keep that in mind, stay tuned. We will be here every day during this Phase 3 portion at City National Arena with the Vegas Golden Knights getting ready for the return to play and the exhibition game against the Arizona Coyotes and the round robin. But this is a weekend, this is hockey, this is back to play, and we've seen little by little the intensity and the pace increase.
And that was the plan, right? Pete DeBoer wasn't sure 100% what he was going to be coming into on day one, but they did know regardless that every single day they wanted to be able to pick things up a little bit. And it's been really cool to see just the different intricacies and changes in systems that he's been trying to implement day after day. So we saw power play stuff a couple days ago. We saw a lot of work on the penalty kill yesterday and scrimmaging every single day. So progress and pace and tempo has been there from day one.
A lot of work on special teams over the last couple of days. The power play 2 days ago, and yesterday the penalty kill dominated the focus.
Yeah, and Pete DeBoer talked a lot about how the penalty kill was one area of focus at the pause that they maybe weren't as happy with. They ended the season overall 27th in the league. In his 22 games, they were 29th in the league in the penalty kill, and that's something that they really want to improve on because Pete DeBoer teams, as you know, have been pretty solid in that area. When he was with
San Jose, number one.
Yep, and when he was with New Jersey as well, they had success with the penalty kill. So that's something that you can tell he wants to establish here with the Golden Knights as well, and it's been a big focus in training camp, and it'll be a big focus for them come playoff time when they actually are in those game situations. They want to have success.
I thought it was interesting yesterday with the penalty kill personnel that he had on the ice that Smith and Carlson were back together, whereas before the pause, Pete DeBoer was deploying the penalty kill, and they were split up. They were normally a really consistent tandem under Gerard Gallant. So when a new coach comes in, he tries something, and in this case, he's gone back to the old reliable.
Well, and there was a phase, too, where they were calling it the power kill because they were having so much success with shorthanded goals. They are a really, really good tandem when it comes in that decision, and Pete DeBoer said that over the course of the pause, they had a lot of opportunity to look at analytics and look at different combinations and things like that, and this was one that they wanted to revisit. When you do have a new coach coming in, you never know what he's going to pick up from the old regime, what he's going to institute for himself, and that was one of those things where he made a change, and now he's looking at reverting to them.
We will let you take in practice via the next-gen camera, the sights and the sounds at certain points where we'll just eavesdrop and let you listen in and watch like you were here at Summerlin Hospital Arena and City National Rink. But we also want to talk to you and communicate, check in with you watching around the world. Yesterday we had some great questions and check-ins from the United Kingdom, Finland, Austria. So let's see who's up, who's watching, who's around, and who's communicating with us in the VGK world today. So send us your questions and your comments.
Love it. I love VGK Worldwide. It's so cool that we have fans from all over, and when you see people checking in from different countries, you're like, what time is it over there? Thank you so much for watching. It's so cool. It's like a weekend. Like yesterday we had stuff. It's 8:30 at night on a Saturday where they're at, and they're watching and interacting with us, and it's just really cool.
I did that with Fight Island last night.
Yeah.
I tried to figure out what time is it in Abu Dhabi, and it was 6 in the morning when they were fighting. Wow, they talk about throwing your clock off. I mean, we go through it with hockey players. They're going to be playing games at noon and mid-afternoon, and then in the evening, and they're going to have to get used to different start times, and that just threw my mind for a loop.
That kind of makes me want to ask you a question. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges that these players are going to have to deal with once they're in the bubble situation, aside from, obviously the COVID in general, but just being in the bubble, what do you think will be some of the biggest challenges?
I think just occupying your time, and I don't want to get too scientific and too deep on this thing, but I do, because as a parent, you kind of go down this road with blue light and exposure and being able to shut off your mind. And we hear so many people, and Marc-Andre Fleury ordered an Xbox, so he's taking it on. Gage Quinney says he plays Call of Duty for some time. So I think that there might be a bit of a challenge for teams and players just to monitor that side of thing. And you may not be doing anything physical during your time in the bubble, but your exposure to all these other senses may just be something that they have to keep track of to give your mind a break.
Well, now that you mention everybody bringing Xbox, can the hotel Wi-Fi handle all of the gaming that's going to be going on in the bubble? I feel like every single player that, they're either gamers already and they have an Xbox or a PS4 or whatever, and everyone that didn't is ordering them to make sure they have them for the bubble. So it's going to be probably teams playing other teams and getting wild.
Well, Flower had two great ones yesterday. One, he ordered the Xbox to keep up with the kids, and his other thing that he wanted to make sure that he was taking to the bubble was a lot of underwear.
Yeah, going to be there a long time.
So two very different strategies there when it came to supplies and important things to take to the bubble. And then at the end, he said, "Okay, guys, thanks, appreciate it. We'll see you later." Well, maybe not. May not see you later because in this Zoom call.
Well, and can I just say, a lot of fans at home might not realize that when we do those Zoom media availability press conferences, the players and Pete DeBoer can't see us. Like, they see themselves. They're looking back at themselves, so they can't actually see us asking the questions. And so he said, "See you around." Like, but he really won't. He might hear us around.
Hear us. You're right. John Merrill also had a great answer yesterday, talking about what he will take to the bubble. He said he's a simple guy, he needs a bed, a TV, that's good. But he also will take a adult coloring book because he's got really into coloring over the pause.
Yep, he said that that's something he really wants to make sure that he keeps up with those skills. And hey, good on you. And what were you telling me the other day about Marc-Andre Fleury and competitive coloring?
Yeah.
So maybe they can have a adult coloring book bout. I'm ready. I am for it. I am all for it.
We'll have to, depending on
Are they
how
crayon
far
guys?
we
Are
go.
they watercolor guys? Are they Sharpies? What are they coloring with?
Watercolor's a whole different level.
Look, I'm
Just saying.
I expect the best.
Stormy Buonantony, Darren Millard here in Studio 31 as the players get on the ice going through their initial warm-ups. Practice will start in a couple of minutes. Pete DeBoer and his coaching staff putting through their paces, really focused on special teams the last couple of days. Saw a real interesting progression. Monday did a lot of full-on scrimmaging, and that was almost like just burn the carbon out. An old term where you used to take the car out after city driving for a long time and just get rid of everything in the engine, blow it up. That's almost what they did on Monday, just to get rid of all the energy and the excitement so they could get down to business and focus a little bit more.
Yeah, it's been interesting just to see, like you said earlier, just the progression and the way that these practices have played out. The scrimmages have been exciting to watch, and I feel really bad for all of the forwards on the Golden Knights this week because these two goaltenders have not let much past them.
I think confidence could be at an all-time low right now when it comes to putting the puck in the
Even
net.
in drills, it's so tough to get past these guys, and that's such a wonderful thing. You get confidence for when you do go play that your goaltenders are going to stand up, right?
Right.
So you just got to hope that they start getting some of that firepower when they're playing other guys. I think it's okay that they're not scoring on these two.
I want to thank our entire crew here with the Vegas Golden Knights. They've done an amazing job this week live streaming these practices to you, being on the air from Studio 31, and making sure that you are able to participate as much as you can during this interesting time. Allison in Sheffield, England checks in, says hello. Lisa in Edmonton. From Scotland, David is watching right now. Marty in Pennsylvania. Jonathan in Aspen. And from Paris. Who's
Delphine?
that? Delphine?
Delphine.
Delphine. And a question from Stephanie on Facebook asks, Darren and Stormy, what are each of you looking forward to most about the playoffs?
I'll let you go first.
I am looking forward to the desperation of those best-of-5 series right off the bat, and how things are going to go from 4 months of waiting, 3 weeks of training camp, ramping it up, and then whoever loses the first game in those best-of-5 series, utter desperation right out of the gate?
That's a really good answer. I think that my answer is kind of similar in the same vein that like I am excited to see who actually has like lived up to our expectations after the pause. And like all of these teams are saying that they've done the right things and that everybody's healthy right now and that everybody's put in the work, whether they have or they haven't. I feel like that's kind of the vibe that you're getting from so many players in their media conferences and every media member on every team saying that the team they cover looks the most dialed in and the most focused, but who actually rises to the occasion and who shows up and who gets the job done on the ice. I'm really excited.
And who is healthy? Because what we've heard a lot about in this first week of Phase 3 is the break has done an amazing task for Club A, B, C, D, because they've been allowed to heal up their boo-boos, as Jonathan Marchessault called it the other day. But over the course of a 3-week training camp and into a exhibition game and the first round, you're going to see some attrition and who can maintain that. And the idea that you can just ramp it up, there are going to be players who suffer the consequences of this rapid return to play.
Tweaks are inevitable, and that's something, again, we've heard across the board from so many teams, is that they're trying to do their best to balance players not having strains, pulls, these little things, and especially with the way that the league has structured in the return to play, that you don't really have upper body, lower body, any of this kind of stuff anymore. It's just fit or unfit to play. And as media, there's a lot of like reading into that, I guess you can do, but you shouldn't let yourself, and that's kind of tough to really know what's going on with a lot of teams and players. You don't actually know what it is.
Sidney Crosby left yesterday's scrimmage and did not practice today.
Right.
We're watching that. David Pastrnak
and
hasn't
that's
practiced.
a team that went through a ton of injuries, a slew of injuries this year.
Boston has been without Pastrnak for a number of days now, but Steven Stamkos is back practicing with the full group with the Tampa Bay Lightning, so just a bit of a round the horn.
But those are two teams as well that you look at coming into this postseason and you're like, wow, they if they are all guns a-blazing, they're going to be fantastic. Like the Bruins were the best team in the league this year, you know? The Pittsburgh Penguins, they had all the capabilities in the world, and they really overachieved, I think, with what they actually had on the ice in terms of players. And so if they are missing key components, that's huge. And so a lot of teams are going to be having to worry about that, monitoring guys and seeing how they can maintain a certain level.
You didn't get to see a lot of Nick Cousins because he was acquired so late in the season, and then the pause happened. But just watching Nick out there with his new line mates, and boy, he is always right in the middle of everything, even in practice.
Yeah, and those three just look like they're having fun. I don't know I don't know how I would feel being another team going up against that line, because they're going to be talking to you, they're going to be hurting you. Not for me. Not for me. I wouldn't want to be around that.
Whistle goes to get the players' attention. Ryan Craig at the whiteboard drawing up the first drill. Want to bring in Thomas from Facebook, who asks, how difficult will it be for announcers and commentators to call games from an alternate site? We are going to be in this studio on Mackenzie River Restaurant here at City National Arena. Dave Gosher and Shane Naidu will be in Studio 31 calling it off a monitor. Dan Duva and Gary Lawless will be calling the radio broadcast from Studio 1 off a monitor, and our intermissions will be in Mackenzie River Restaurant. Our job won't really change a lot. You won't have the face-to-face of the interviews, but Dave and Shane and Gary and Dan will have the biggest adjustment.
Yeah, definitely. And it's kind of been interesting hearing from like Dan and Dave how they've had experiences calling off of monitors before and what those experiences have been like, to maybe prepare them in a sense for what this will be, because it's definitely not the norm. For me, something that you mentioned, not having the face-to-face, like one of my favorite parts of my job is doing those in-person interviews and, you know, asking the questions that I hope the fans want to have answered during intermissions and such. And so a lot of things logistically, I know the league and all of the different media outlets are still trying to coordinate and work out how a lot of those things will happen or will not happen. And so that's something that if we don't get those types of interviews, that I would be disappointed in. But I know that they're working on trying to make sure we're able to hear from players during those times, which will be great.
Dan Duva is scheduled to join us in about 40 minutes from now, and we'll make sure that maybe even a bit
Getting rid of
earlier.
me.
If the scrimmage starts, no, I don't want to get rid of you, but if the scrimmage does start earlier, we're going to bring Dan on to try and call some of the action. Maybe we'll have Dan call it from the monitor instead of looking out our window here in Studio 31, just to get an idea of the challenges, and he can tell us about that as he calls a scrimmage. A little experimenting and broadcasting all at the same time. We'll try and do that if time permits and the schedule times out well. Gila Monster Hockey on Twitch asks, which player do you think will score the first VGK playoff goal this year?
Oh man, I'm like the worst at predictions in the world.
I don't think we're going to hold you to this.
All right, I'm not that person. Well, if it's based on who's scored goals in practices so far, it'll be a little bit of an odd bunch. So, who scored so far? So we've got Alex Tuck, Patrick Brown has scored, Nick Waugh has scored. Let's go with Alex Tuck. He's looked really good. I like the way that third line has come out, and as Pete DeBoer said yesterday, they've improved and looked better and better on the ice every single day. I'm gonna go with Tucky. Does that work for you?
That works perfectly because he has looked fabulous all week, and we know that he was battling injury at the pause, and just seeing him out healthy and 100% and using that speed and then finishing has been just a real boom to sight for sore eyes right now.
Boom goes the dynamite.
When you examine the whole picture about playoffs and scoring and big name players, I'm going to go Mark Stone.
Yeah.
You
can't go wrong even saying that name.
No, because I think it'll be such an interesting reaction without fans, playoff hockey, and then emotional Mark Stone.
No matter who scores or where Mark Stone is on the ice, I would love if we could just get one of the cameras on our world feed to be on Mark Stone at all times, bench, ice, wherever, so that when anything good happens, we can have the immediate expressive Mark Stone.
Reeves was expressive there, having a little back and forth with Marc-Andre Fleury. Paul Stastny on the ice today. Again, we're seeing more of the main group now. They've divided it into what they'll go with in the opening game and the exhibition game, and then the taxi squad practices over on the Star Nursery Arena and comes and makes a main group halfway through. So that's the situation right now at Summerlin Hospital Rink, live streaming this Vegas Golden Knights practice, training camp 2.0. We'll take you now with the sights and sounds, just let you listen to practice for a little bit as we broadcast live from Studio 31 at City National Arena. Boise here, calling on the players, encouraging the players. Running this drill is assistant coach Ryan Craig as he puts the players through their paces on this Sunday morning in Nevada. The Golden Knights, day 6 of their training camp, and they've only taken 1 day off, and it's going to be that sort of work 2 or 3 days, take a day off, right on through until they go to Edmonton and the Hub City. Darren Millard along with Stormy Bonatoni, Studio 31, live streaming this practice. Check in with us on your various platforms. Jonathan in Tennessee has said hello. Mika in Finland, Fran in Cape Breton, Renee from Pennsylvania on vacation in Georgia though. Wants to make sure she gets the home stadium.
Stay safe.
And Callum on YouTube lives in San Jose but is a Golden Knights fan. You must lead a very interesting life.
You're one of the good ones, let me tell you.
This is our situation where we're going to be live streaming every day that the Golden Knights are on the ice at the Star Nursery and the Summerlin Hospital arenas here at City National Arena. Dan Duva is going to join us in just a little bit, but doing some flow drills this morning before we anticipate more game simulations.
Yeah, it's just fun to hear the sights and sounds of practices, which makes you wonder what the sights and sounds are going to be on game days without fans in the stands. And it was kind of funny just listening to Pete DeBoer and some of the players reference that yesterday and what they expect. And Pete DeBoer said, well, we're oftentimes mic'd up in those situations, so we're pretty used to it. We just know, like, be a little bit cognizant of it, what have you. But for the players, they're not really used to that situation as much, especially in, like, a game setting. So I think it'll be kind of exciting to be able to hear some of the things that they're saying. And Marc-Andre Fleury specifically called out Jonathan Marchessault and said, I think he's going to be the one that you might have to watch. He can be a little bit of a yapper, but it's really funny the stuff he comes up with.
What do you say? Because he's always talking.
He's always talking.
So you'll hear him.
He is like a bundle of entertainment and energy.
Yeah, when the first call that doesn't go your way or close call at the blue line, that kind of thing, that's when we'll know.
I'm curious how much we'll really be able to hear. I know that they're trying to set up like different microphone locations and stuff like that, and I think it'll be a really, really great viewing experience. But how much will you really be able to hear over what we're able to hear now watching a practice like this?
Okay, I will be surprised if there isn't some type of delay.
Oh, there will have to be, like
3,
a 7
4
second
seconds.
for safety.
And
all of a sudden we think our audio's out, but you
and
know
a
what happened.
little sensor pressing the button, and it just it's gone.
I don't envy that job.
But then you also bring up the idea, and I'll just segue into maybe different streams, right? Whether it's the adult content, what we saw from the Jordan documentary.
Right.
You had one side
Right.
that had everything in it, and the other side that was a little more PG.
I wonder if like the players would be down for that. Would they be okay with, like, what if their mom doesn't know the way that they might speak in a game situation, and they're just like the nicest guy in the world, like opens doors, does all of these things, but then when he gets on the ice, it's a different situation. And grandma doesn't want to hear that.
You're right. So we get her the PG
Yeah,
stream.
we get her the
Robin
muted
Lehner
one.
at one end, Marc-Andre Fleury at the other. They go through practice on this Sunday morning at Summerlin Hospital Rink. Vegas Golden Knights, 1 week from today, will be headed off to the bubble in Edmonton. We're already halfway through this initial stage of Phase 3.
It's crazy that it's gone by so quickly. I can't believe how this week has flown by, and it's been so fun for us to be just working and talking about hockey again. I can't even imagine what it must be like in the heads of these players who are so excited to be around their friends, be playing the game that they love, and have a legitimate chance to be a contender for a Stanley Cup here in just like potentially a couple months. Like it's crazy how this is happening.
Gage Quinney was asked an interesting question yesterday. How do you capture the eye of the coaching staff during the course of regular practices and the odd scrimmage, but we're predominantly doing drills and game simulations. So how do you make sure that you're doing as much as you can possibly do without the advantage of or opportunity of an exhibition game? And he said you have to buckle down so much more. And I think that's why we've seen the pace the way it is so far during this training camp.
What have you thought of all of the young players so far and the way that, they have to impress these coaches, not in game situations, but through practices. And we've heard a couple of the younger players like Patrick Brown talking about you can't take a drill off. Like, you can't fall asleep out there at all. You have to be completely engaged from start to finish. What have you thought of some of the younger players?
Fine. Pace. Good. Everybody. And I think that comes as much from the veteran players as it does from the younger players who are in this unique situation of a training camp in the middle of July and going into the season in August is the example is set right at the very start, and they follow through. And you don't want to be the one that's going to screw it up on the heels of them doing everything right. Them, the veteran players I'm referring to, following through and having the intensity the way that they've been able to approach things. So I think there's a little bit of give and take. There's some enthusiasm, some anxiety of I have to be at the top of my game from a younger player and a prospect perspective, but there's also the living up to the example of the older players, which you really have. We talked about it at length about the commitment during phase 2, and that's carried over, and you've been able to watch it through the next gen camera here at City National Arena and Summerlin Hospital Rink. Just the pace that the players have put themselves through.
And Pete DeBoer said about Peyton Krebs and about a couple of these younger players, the biggest compliment he can give is that they haven't looked out of place, that they have fit in these drills and in the scrimmage portions and stuff. And that's a very good feeling you have to have, I imagine, as a head coach, to know that, yes, your primary players and your leadership group is performing, but that the younger guys coming up don't look out of place and that they're growing in this system as well.
Exhibition game will take place against the Arizona Coyotes on July 30th, and then the 3 round robin games, which will be on Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, August 3rd, 6th, and 8th against Dallas, St. Louis, and Colorado. That exhibition game against Arizona in Edmonton is going to be really important for the coaching staff. We know that. But I think from the players' angle, getting into a game situation, wearing the uniform, being in a game environment is going to be a step towards being normal. But also, I think playing in that environment without fans is going to be the big takeaway from that game more than anything else, just trying to get used to that.
Well, and how they handle it. We talked the other day just about Robin Leonard's comments in terms of mindset and how will the fans be an advantage? Will the lack of fans be an advantage or a disadvantage for certain players? Because some get really maybe a little intimidated or a little bit anxious by the crowd, while other players thrive on it, and it really drives them to either have their home crowd behind them or to quiet an opposing crowd. So just the mindset and how that'll affect certain players, I think, will be interesting. And also just Riley Smith, I thought he was funny saying, like, I don't even know if we need an exhibition game. It'll be a nice little tune-up, but, like, we're ready to go. We want to play real games. And I love that enthusiasm for his excitement for what's to come.
I think it'll be unnerving for everybody at the start, just because it's so different.
And you'll have the PA announcer still.
Which I think is important, because there will be people, management, different people as part of the 52 on each organization in the building in the suites. So there is a reason why, because it doesn't, when you think about it on the surface, like, why is there an announcer? But there's going to be some people in the building. But from the Vegas Golden Knights side of it, they practice in front of a full rink every day under normal circumstances. Like, practices aren't even in the quiet privacy of that environment. So it is that next step of uniqueness. So the one exhibition game I think is going to be pivotal.
Yeah, it'll be a little bit bizarre. I wonder, and I've heard a couple people ask this question, and maybe you might have some better insight to it, but will we see a lot of players watching other games from the stands if they're not playing on this day?
I don't think so. I don't think they'll be allowed.
Or would they be allowed? Okay.
I don't think
That's
so.
what I was curious about.
That is just my gut feeling on that. I don't have any intel.
How funny would that be, though? If you have, like, some players that are, like, heckling other teams or have made their own posters and signs, I think that would be great content.
I think it'd be beautiful to see the Arizona Coyotes start the wave during the St. Louis Vegas Golden Knights game during the round robin.
I'm just spitballing here.
Yeah.
I'm an idea man.
Yeah, sure. I don't mind. The Olympics, right? You see other athletes and teams all attend all types of events. I don't anticipate that happening here. Not with all the Xbox and the shenanigans that will take place inside the bubble. but that's a place that I hadn't gone before.
Speaking of which, it sounds like Marc-Andre Fleury might be a little bit bummed at the situation that he might not even be close enough to prank his own teammates, let alone other players. But I love Marc-Andre Fleury and just his personality and the way that he just takes everything in stride and has fun with it. Like, how entertaining would that be in a bubble situation where they were allowed to be around each other and, like, guys that he knows pretty well just messing with other teams? It would be very entertaining.
Penguins would be very happy that they're in Toronto and not in Edmonton.
True.
Check-ins continue. Joshua in Toledo. Jared is watching from South Carolina via YouTube. Hello to you, Jared. This one, Kenneth, just curious. You're in Hawaii, but what island are you on? We'd love to know, just to dial that in a little bit. And how about the Go Knights Go from San Diego, from Greg, Dana, Candace, and Madeline on Twitter.
Go Knights Go! I love it. We can get a chant going.
And
Go
it's great
Knights,
because
go.
the Henderson Silver Knights, right? So Knights hockey.
It works for everything.
It's,
Works for everything.
It's one chant, two teams, one family, as you watch the Next Gen camera here at the Summerlin Hospital Rink, City National Arena. Drills continue this Sunday, day 6 of training camp. 2.0, Vegas Golden Knights preparing for the Edmonton scenario and the bubble city, the secured zone. They will take on the Arizona Coyotes in the first preseason game, the one exhibition game on July 30th, and then the round robin to determine the seeding in the first round of the playoffs. Dallas, St. Louis, and Colorado, the order of the opposition there.
Speaking of which, Jonathan is asking us what seed do we see the Knights landing after the round robin?
That's tough because it's kind of weird. You can, if there's a tie, if Colorado and Vegas are tied, or Vegas and Dallas are tied, the advantage goes. The tiebreaker is the team that was higher in the standings during the regular season at the time of the pause, that higher point percentage. So there's another caveat that go in that.
A lot of layers.
And that's also my way of getting out of answering the
predictions.
the
I don't like
question.
predictions either, but I can tell you that this group definitely wants to have the number 1 seed, and they want to have the advantage of last change, and that's the goal. That's what they're going for. So, avoiding questions. You're welcome.
We'll finally be able to see too the true advantage of last change, because last change always goes with the home team. So you have the environment, which is an advantage, and then last change with an advantage. But without that crowd factor playing a role into it, we'll see last change and the real benefit to that on its own, which is, I guess, one of the unique parts about this.
Do we want to listen in a little bit to what's happening over here?
First, Kenneth is in Oahu.
Ooh, nice. Thank you. That's
Appreciate
so
that.
cool.
Mark is watching from...
I wish I was in Oahu sometimes. Like,
Do you see where Mark is watching from?
Mark is watching from planet Earth. Me too.
That's awesome. And happy birthday, Denise. Denise, a birthday present will take you out to the ice surface via the Next Gen camera, and continuing practice, Pete DeBoer at the board.
That's
Now,
a very busy board.
Can you make sense of that? There's no way I'm going first in this drill.
I think he's getting some adult coloring in.
You there got it. Pete DeBoer sending the troops out to do their thing. Vegas Golden Knights training camp continues. This live stream of training camp 2.0 from Summerlin Hospital Arena and City National Arena here on your social media channels of the Vegas Golden Knights. Hope you're enjoying our coverage of Day 6 of Training Camp 2.0 for the Vegas Golden Knights. Pete DeBoer at the whiteboard. Just to your left, that's Chris Davidson-Adams, equipment manager for the Vegas Golden Knights. Look at the safety precautions in place there. They have done a remarkable job around the Golden Knights, the medical staff right on down, to make sure that everybody is protected, everybody's doing their best to ensure that this team gets to the bubble in Edmonton in the best possible shape. The coaching staff at center ice setting up this drill as we bring you back into Studio 31. Thanks to Storm Bonatoni for putting up with me for the first hour of this workout. And here is radio play-by-play commentator Dan Duva. Welcome.
Hi, Darren.
So
I think Chris Davidson-Adams looks like he was plucked from the casting of E.T. You know, the hazmat scene where they're trying to, do the whole, thing with the tunnels and the plastic. It looks like he belongs in there.
There's a mad scientist look there that's occurring, face shield.
Or he's flying to Mars or something.
And he has been here making sure that the players are looked after throughout Phase 2 and Phase 3 and making sure that they get in and out without all the situation with your own dressing room, your own gear, and all that kind of routine that makes it easier for everybody. But this hasn't been easy because they've been using different dressing rooms and in the smaller groups and now into training camp.
We think about the unsung heroes that we try to point out when we can, the training staff, the equipment staff, the guys who so often fans don't know their names, don't know what they look like, but the players and coaches and management would say these people are indispensable. Just the amount of time spent in hiring those folks when the Golden Knights began a couple of years ago. J.W. Aiken, for instance, who's an equipment manager, an assistant to Chris. You think about where, he had come up. I got to know him in Syracuse, but he had, just a long career working through the minors. And, these guys have worked their way up, too. So there's so much pressure on them in the first place because this is the highest level. You got to have that stick ready. You've got to make sure that a player's injury status is not being pushed too strongly or not taken seriously. Now you add all of these additional concerns. Boy, those jobs already unsung, already difficult and challenging, now just take it up another notch or two easily.
And you think back to that visual of Chris on the bench. Critter is his nickname.
That's right.
I don't think he ever foresaw or predicted that he would be working a National Hockey League practice dressed like that.
No, I hope that someone has taken a photograph at close range. and Kyle is one of the trainers there too with Chris. Yeah, that is a visual.
But it goes to the extreme lengths that you go to make sure both Chris is healthy and the players are healthy, the coaching staff is healthy, and everybody stays symptom-free and virus-free before they get to Edmonton and inside that secure zone.
I'm with Stormy, though, on the watching of the games. If the players are all in the bubble already and they're starved for things to occupy their time, why not assign the Golden Knights Section 2 and the St. Louis Blues Section 4? You can still keep the teams somewhat separated by section. There ought to be plenty of room at Rogers Place in Edmonton. Why not let them in the arena and watch the games? That would be a fantastic, and then that would be sort of a story within the game for the folks who are calling the games, or directing the games. Hey, let's cut to what Jonathan Marchessault thought of that goal scored by Yanni Gourde. Well, he's wrong conference. Or Ryan O'Reilly. It's just it would be an interesting dynamic. I thought it was a great idea from Stormy.
We have spent a lot of time this week conversing, communicating, going back and forth with Vegas Golden Knight fans over these social media channels, asking for their questions and done our best to answer those. So I'm going to chime in, and this is Darren from Studio 31 asking Dan Duva a question. Of the players on the Vegas Golden Knights, who would be most likely to attend a random game when the team gets to Edmonton on an off day?
It's a very simple answer. Zach Whitecloud. I'm sure there are others, but Zach Whitecloud, no doubt about it. When I hear the phrase student of the game, I think of Zach Whitecloud. Sponge, I think of Zach Whitecloud. And it brings us back to what was March of 2018. Zach had just signed, free agent out of Bemidji State, and he joined the Golden Knights in Buffalo, New York. Not dressed, not practicing, just physically joined the team, flew him in, and he comes to the press box a little bit before the start of the game. I introduced myself, we chatted briefly, and then he was looking to find the spot where to sit to watch his first Vegas Golden Knights game. But before he found a spot, he asked me for pen and paper because he was going to sit down and take notes on what he saw from the Golden Knights and Buffalo Sabres. And when we chatted about it earlier this year, when he got called up from Chicago, I asked him, do you still have those notes? He said, absolutely. So it wasn't just posturing or for perception. He is a sponge. And I remember talking to Rocky Thompson about it last year. We went down to San Diego when the Chicago Wolves played the San Diego Gulls in the Western Conference Finals in the Calder Cup Playoffs. And that student of the game mentality was still with Zach, well into his first full professional season. And, here we are in the tail end of his second professional season. And just a really interesting guy to talk to. He's got so much up there. We have a certain amount of time for our pregame interviews, and I know that if it's a pregame interview with Zach, I'm going to have to do some editing because he has so much to say. And I want to hear it all, so I'm not going to stop him, but only for air constraints do I have to trim it down.
We had a question earlier, Dan, about who we think will score the first goal in the round robin for the Vegas Golden Knights. Stormy and I both offered up our picks, our choices, for various reasons, but you have an interesting angle on this.
I thought Tomas Nosek, because he scored the first goal at T-Mobile Arena in Vegas Golden Knights history against the Arizona Coyotes. We remember that. October 10th, was it? Yeah, that was when they scored the first 4 goals in about 11 minutes. And then the first playoff game, which was against the Los Angeles Kings, there was 1 goal in that one, scored by Shea Theodore, assisted by Tomas Nosek. Scored a big one in the conference finals against Winnipeg, and not 1 but 2 goals in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup final. Had the game winner, followed shortly thereafter by an empty net goal. So Tomas Nosek, though he has not produced a ton of goals, he has managed to score some timely goals. So if Tomas Nosek's in the lineup, I'd watch out for number 92. Not to mention, if he is in the lineup, it very well could be on that 4th line. Reeves, Carrier, and Nosek have come through in some big spots this year. Not when you necessarily anticipated it, but boy, that has been a real strong point for the Golden Knights, especially in the few weeks leading up to the pause.
And I anticipate a direct message will be arriving in the inbox of Pete DeBoer, his various accounts, email or social media later on today from either Tomas himself or his representative, just with a clip of what you just said.
Well, each of those guys, Nosek with 8, Reeves with 8, Carrier with 7. Those were the totals going into that game on March 9th against the Edmonton Oilers. That is the kind of production that you would love to get from a 4th line. They do so much more than that, but when you can get all of the regular physicality, the momentum-changing pace that they play, plus that kind of offensive production, and then don't forget, Tomas Nosek is a terrific penalty killer. And that's one of the decisions we've seen Nick Cousins there centering the 4th line rather than Nosek. Nosek today in those green jerseys with Gage Quinney and Keegan Colasar. Maybe Nosek finds himself on the outside looking in, but you never know. He finds himself in the lineup for a game here or there, different line, different situation. He can play the wing, can play center, and has championship pedigree, won a Calder Cup a few years back.
Young guys picking up the pucks. The completion of this portion of practice, they'll do cleaning of the sheet and then come back, and what has been the case is more of game simulations and or scrimmages. They'll come back with names and numbers on the back of the sweater and divide it into 2 teams. Everybody will be part of the group that was on the Summerlin Hospital rink, and then the extra, the taxi squad from the Star Nursery rink will all come together. And Dan Duva, if they do scrimmage, are you okay? Because we kind of teed this up, but we didn't get your approval. So really, it doesn't
twist my arm.
It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what you say. We've already set you up that if we can, maybe we can get you to call a little bit of the action, because you did it the other day, and the reaction was extraordinary. People are just loved hearing the sound of you calling a game again.
Well, thanks. I appreciate you all who tweeted and texted and whatnot. It was very much a ball for me. I've got my charts and notes ready, and I don't know that I'm gonna have time to use them, but I've got we talked about coloring. I've got all my colored markers here and everything, so I am ready to go. I've got a whole bag of color coding everything. I might not get to put that into practice quite yet, though. This looks pretty colorless.
Okay, so give us an idea of what you have for sheets here. And,
Sure.
And if you can, on your single shot, maybe just hold it up for people to. You're not going to be able to read exactly what's on, but an idea of what's on these sheets for a play-by-play announcer.
Yeah. So this is the one from the last game that the Knights played against the Edmonton Oilers. So I've been referring to this because most of the numbers are pretty much up to date.
And what's on here?
And so what you're seeing on what is the left side, that's all the Golden Knights players. So you got the two goalies on the top, Fleury and Leonard. Then you've got the four lines, and then you've got the defensemen. So, your Knights are carrying extra players, so not every single person. You can see there might be a couple of X's, guys who got crossed out. And then you're seeing the Edmonton Oilers over on the other side. And then sort of where my fingers are at the bottom, you're seeing some special teams. You've got power play, penalty kill, goals against average, league rankings. And then, kind of the other space, there's just random notes and things that I might have made in the course of the day or even as the game is unfolding. I've got another card. You could switch off of this so I don't make you dizzy. There's another one that's got, let's see, here's the full roster for everybody. We'll try to get a shot of this one. The roster that's got all the players, and this was the one going into that last game. So I still have I haven't printed out the updated version that we'll use for July 30th against Arizona.
What do the columns represent?
So you see, obviously, the numbers, the names. The color coding is for a position, so you can see the gold color is defenseman. If the white with black lettering are forwards, and if a guy's got a red number, that means he was expected to play center that day. So you can see Stevenson, Stastny, Carlson, and Nosek. And then the columns, you'll see that the first one, I know it's very hard to see, and I'm kind of going off of memory here because it's so small I can't even see it from off the monitor. But you've got position, you'd have contract. In other words, you'd have years, amount of money, and the range of years that a contract would expire. You'd have height, weight, date of birth, age, hometown. That's all in the first column. Second column would be usually amateur information. You're going to have the draft, if you were drafted. Then you're going to have sort of career stuff, career games played. Next column would be, thank you for switching off of that so I could read it myself, the column that would have what college or what junior team that you played for, what years, some notes from that amateur experience. And then after that, it's kind of year by year what you did in the 2018-19 season and maybe the 17-18 season. And then from there, it sort of blends into whatever might be interesting. Maybe you've got a story. Let's just pick, here's, Tomáš Nosek. He just a recent stretch where he had a shorthanded goal against Winnipeg. So just little things like that. And then the more recent stuff is in the last column, so I know what a player is up to of late, a trend, or Ryan Reeves' hit total is up to 305 as of this document's printing. So there's all kinds of stuff in there. How much of it can I read? I might need a magnifying glass at some point.
Yeah, two observations here. One, you have a steady hand, man. To hold that up there for that long and not be shaking all over the place, good on you. And two, your eyes must be extraordinary to be able to read that.
I'll have to make sure to update my contact lens prescription before we start the next round of hockey here so I can continue this. But to be honest, and I appreciate that, but in all seriousness, I very rarely look at this stuff during a game because the action is in front of us. If I take my eyes off the ice even for a moment, I might miss something. And that is the worst feeling as a broadcaster. If you hear the crowd react, and we won't have that, of course, but if you know that something has happened and you didn't see it, it's just, it feels like you've been, caught doing something wrong. So the act of putting this all together, the process of typing this in, writing it down, puts it in your brain, at least temporarily, not permanently. And that's what's helpful, so that when there's something that happens on the ice, I can think, oh, that's right. Ryan Reeves did X, Y, and Z against this team last time, and 2 days from now, I'm not going to remember that. But because I had done the preparation the night before, the morning of, or before the game, it's fresh in my mind. So it's
commercial
it's
break.
More
you
of
might
a
reference it, or intermission, or something like that.
Yeah. And so this is more of a security blanket. It's sort of like if you were to
Do you update that every game?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I do. And it's sort of like if you were to, I liken it to taking a test. Imagine if your teacher or professor said, well, you can make a cheat sheet for the test.
I'm familiar with that in high school.
Yeah, and just going through, all right, what are you going to put on the cheat sheet? And then sometimes the teacher will say, you can bring your cheat sheet in to the exam. Well, that's kind of what it's like. I make the cheat sheet. I got to figure out what to put on there. And then they let me bring it into the radio booth. And then as the game is going on, here's the last one I'll show you. This is sort of a card. This is somewhat inspired by Dave Gosher, who does his own style of all this stuff. Everybody's got their own style. But this is period by period, sort of a scoring card. Not everything shows up on a game sheet with the points, the goals, the assists. So there are other things that I would write down just to jog my memory, or something that I'd want to look up, or remind myself, hey, when was the last time that Vegas had, a shorthanded goal or something like that? And then there's the numbers at the bottom, the totals, where you've got, shots, penalty minutes, power play numbers, and that sort of stuff. So it's just a helpful reminder, so that when there's a lot of things happening in a game, you forget, so this way, just write, again, the act of writing it down just helps put it in your brain.
These 4 sheets are just spread out in front of you in the
broadcast
broadcast booth?
I usually, and I've got a roster of, for the other team as well.
Oh, yeah, there's another team.
Yeah, there.
So you don't have 8 sheets. Do you do?
There's the Edmonton Oilers. There it is.
Okay, so you do this
There's
for
the
every
Edmonton
visiting
Oilers
team.
one. Yeah, and what's great, I like to do so much by hand. Like I said, you're putting so much of it in your brain, and I find with my colorful markers, writing it all down helps it stay in my head. But as you can see, there's so much information on here, I couldn't do it all. I wouldn't have enough time to write all of this down game after game after game. So I use some software that I can duplicate. The last time Vegas played Edmonton, I just go to that date. Here it is, March 9th, and say Vegas plays Edmonton in a playoff series here. I could just duplicate that and update it accordingly. That saves some time. But so it's a constant balance. And I'll tell you, like the way that I have this all set out right here, it's not like I've been doing it this exact way for 10 years. It's every year an evolution. Oh, I think I'm spending too much time on this, or I haven't spent enough time on that. This is missing from the broadcast. So that's something I'm always evaluating. And I talked to Gary Lawless about it too, because how are we maximizing each other's skills? He's got so many great stories. I don't want to bog down our broadcast with numbers. Nothing is more boring than numbers on the radio. I want to hear a story. But what's the little something that I can spark a story from Gary? And hopefully somewhere it's in all of these papers.
Well, Jake is appreciative, says, doing your homework, sign of a quality announcer. Nice work, Mr. Duva.
Thank you.
Some people memorize rosters by lines. Do you do that?
Yeah, and that's why the card that I showed you before, where you've got the Golden Knights on the left and the Oilers on the right, I do make a point of wanting those players in a line. And you got to know the jersey numbers, of course, which is why the roster is in number order. But if I, for example, I'm just thinking when I was calling the game off the scrimmage off the monitor the other day, the angle that you're seeing now is, one end of the ice. So I can more likely see the jersey number of the player on this side of the ice. And if I, for example, see that Derek Englund is here, number 5, and I know that John Merrill is his defensive partner and Merrill's playing on the left, I can make a pretty good guess. I'm not sure, but it's a good place to start that the guy on the other side is going to be John Merrill. Same thing. If I see, let's see, Mark Stone's hair, right? I can't see anybody's number, but I can see Stone's hair. Well, then I'm going to bet that Max Pacioretty's on the ice too. And again, it's not that you're 100% sure with some of those visual, non-numeric clues, but it gets your mind going in the right direction, and you kind of use context clues to figure out who's who. I hate guessing. I almost never guess, but because I hate to be wrong. I can't say that I haven't been wrong. I'm sure that I have many times, but I hate being wrong, so I avoid guessing as much as I can. But knowing the lines and the defensive pairs is one of the reasons that we spend time at morning skate watching these practices and scrimmages, and that's why I write it down in the order that you see it.
Want to say hello to everybody watching in Vegas and Henderson. Great enthusiastic fan base. Normally they're here at City National Arena and Summerlin Hospital Rink, but unable to be here, so we appreciate you joining us on this live stream. Kimberly, Shelley, Stacy, Kathy, Bill, Kev, and Denise, all watching in the Valley today. So
that's great. Thank you.
hopefully everybody's safe. Players have made their way back to the Summerlin Hospital rink surface, and we'll get ready for what will be some game simulations and some scrimmage. And after all of this and this explanation that you so eloquently and detailed-wise took us through, we will get you to call some action, but we want you to do it off the monitor. We do have a window out to the rink that Dan could easily call the game on by sight. But just as a way to give the viewers and the listeners just an idea of what you go through when you call a game off the monitor and differences. I might ask you a couple of questions as we go through this, just how you might change your call off a monitor as opposed to being in the rink and watching it firsthand.
Yeah, and my fear, and I'll admit there is apprehension going into this because we haven't done it very much. I have some experience doing games off of monitors, but not Stanley Cup playoff games and not every game. And it's new. So we're going to figure it out. But when we did this the other day, it was sort of impromptu. So
I left for a bit. Let's just be totally honest with everybody. I left for a bit, had a meeting. You were by yourself, so you just went into what comes natural, and you called the game.
Well, thankfully, I had time to watch enough of the practice portion of this session that I wrote down the lines in the defensive pairs, as you were talking about. So there was a gray team and a white team. So I've got those lines from the other day, but I'm not sure that they have necessarily kept the lines on the same teams. So that is the challenge. It's hard enough to figure out who's who and who's on which line, but now, today, we're going to have to figure out who is on which team. So there's Nick Waugh, and we're going to assume that he's with Chandler Stevenson and Alex Tuck. And I'll tell you, just watching some of the practice while you and Stormy were talking, Darren, Nick Waugh continues to impress. And maybe it was just the angle from the spot we have here looking down on the rink, but he looks like he's filled out even more since we last saw him in game action back in March. He was behind the net in an offensive zone scenario right down beneath us, and he made this move to get to the front of the net, and the guy who we beat was Will Carlson. That was, to me, the standout singular moment from what I was watching at practice today. Didn't lead directly to a goal, but it was just the physical burst and the courageous maneuver by Watt to get to that spot.
He's faster than you would think looking at him.
I think you're right. Yeah, and then the other notable play was Nosek made a nice drop pass to Paul Stastny, who cruised in from the right side.
You're going to get Nosek in the lineup on opening night by the time we're done with this thing.
Yeah, Tomáš Nosek, he's been trying to string together, these contracts year to year. If he can find a spot to stick with this team, part of it will be the salary. He's making $1 million this year. We know that the salary cap is not going up for the foreseeable future. So how you can fill out your roster with players Pete DeBoer and George McPhee and Kelly McCrimmon can trust. I think that Tomáš Nosek is one of those one of those players that you can trust. And it's something that you talked about earlier with Stormy, Darren. When you think about, for the young players to make an impression, how do you do that in non-game scenarios? I mean, even a scrimmage is not a true game scenario. I'd have to think, if I'm Pete DeBoer, if I'm Kelly McCrimmon, if I'm anybody on the staff, I want to know, can I trust this player? And if there's a young guy who's trying to make an impression but is trying too hard to make an impression, it's almost a sign that he's not ready. He's not quite as mature as you'd like him to be. Maybe you need to rein him in. Keep doing what got you here. And I think that once you get to that place where you can trust a young player to not overdo it, to simply keep doing those things that got him here, then you've got that trust. And that, to me, is what I would look for in trying to decide if a young player is ready to get into a Stanley Cup Playoffs lineup.
Players making their way onto the ice surface after the flood. What just basically happened was they let the ice settle a little bit and just dry out after doing the resurface to make sure that there's no wet spots, and just it helps the quality and the surface and the consistency of it. So Marc-Andre Fleury at one end, both goaltenders, number one and two goaltenders are out there right now. Robin Lehner at the other, and we'll see what the coaching staff has in store right off the bat. Want to also mention that the Twitch viewers, keep those emotes coming. Psydoc, thanks for subscribing on Twitch. Rita in Chile and Andrew in England, appreciate your being with us today, all over the world, VGK Worldwide, watching this training camp bulletin from Summerlin Hospital Rink, Studio 31, overlooking the Summerlin Hospital Arena, and the Next Gen camera taking you onto the ice, giving you an idea of the what's happening during training camp 2.0. Remind you, we are 1 week into phase 3, and this continuing ramp up of what Pete DeBoer has installed with this group. A lot of scrimmaging the first couple of days, shake off the rust, and then into more system work, more details the last couple of weeks on the power play and the penalty killing unit with the Vegas Golden Knights.
So Jonathan Marchessault's wearing gray. That's good to know.
Can you tell us how your call might change off a monitor, or do you know yet, rather than being in person?
My bet, and I mentioned this before, my apprehension is that I'll have to do more guessing, which I really don't want to do, but there will be things that I will want to provide to the listener, but that I can't see. And normally I could use context clues to be reasonably certain about something, but, you know, for example, right there, Jonathan Marchessault, he's wearing gray, Fleury's wearing gray, so I'm going to guess they're going to be on the gray team. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to assume,
Solid.
based on what we were watching earlier in practice, that Marchessault will again be skating with he was on the white team the other day, but still with Paul Stastny and Riley Smith. So just because I see Marchessault on the ice, I'm going to have to guess that Stastny is going to be at center and that Riley Smith will be on the right wing. Now, what happened the other day during the scrimmage we tried, the Knights were in the midst of a change. The gray team was changing, and Will Karlsson got a pass from Nick Waugh near the right circle, and Karlsson shot it. Now, my instinct was Karlsson and Waugh are not on the same line. How is it that one would pass to the other? And the answer was, well, there was a line change going on, and you could see the gray team is at this side of the ice, so they had the longer change. So Karlsson had started to come on, but Nick Waugh was still on the ice. So that sort of guessing doesn't always work. And I even hesitated at that moment because I thought, well, maybe it's not Karlsson, maybe it's somebody else, and I just misread the number. But
Okay, so just to prove your point, you see Marchessault on the ice, but it ends up that they're working on the power play.
Right.
So different line mates.
Yes, and that's why during a stoppage in play, a whistle, when there's a reset, before a face-off, it's so critical to figure out who's on the ice. When Gary is telling a story on the radio during one of those brief stoppages in play, I can trust Gary to entertain the listener for those few seconds because I'm making a point, especially with different arenas, you've got different vantage points. I want to see who's on the ice at a certain time. And when you're looking at a monitor, if a guy doesn't turn around, you might not be able to see who he is. Whereas in an arena, you've got your own vantage point and you've got video screens to aid. But how this plays out without being in the arena, I might not be able to do that as much.
Power play, penalty kill, work happening simultaneously. This appears to be more focused on the man advantage with Pete DeBoer. I didn't mean to turn this into a broadcast school or a play-by-play how to, but we've gone down this path, so I just want to continue it a couple of steps further. Some teams have numbers that are easier to see than other clubs.
Oh, boy.
So and that's when you're watching in the rink. How much will that help when you're watching on TV? Or maybe because the cameras are a little bit closer, you might be able to see a little bit easier?
I'm hoping so. Often before a face-off, there will be a tight shot. So there's Quinney taking the draw against Cousins, and Cousins won it back for the great team here. So at the defense, I could tell, there's Nick Hague over here, and he's a lefty. That's another important thing, Darren, is knowing if a player is a left-handed shot or a right-handed shot, as Holden gets in the way of Nick Cousins in front of the net. If somebody's coming towards center like Age Quinney, and I know that he's a lefty, and there's going to be more lefties than righties on pretty much every hockey team, and the Golden Knights have very few right-handed defensemen in particular. I kind of went off a different track there. What question did you want me to answer again?
Well, you know what you did?
I don't have my lecture notes.
No, but you fell into the rhythm of calling.
Yeah.
The question was just numbers.
The jersey numbers.
Certain numbers are easier to see on sweaters.
I'll put it to you this way. Thank goodness the Ottawa Senators are not playing against the Golden Knights or anybody in the postseason. Nothing against the Senators in general, but they have those, I think they used to call it Northwestern striping. I don't know if that's what they call it in Ottawa. But there are horizontal bands of color, stripes around the waist that intersect with the numerals on the back of the player's jersey. So it's hard enough when you've just got, say, white numbers on a gray jersey or gray numbers on a white jersey. These jerseys are pretty good. White on gray, gray on white, that's all fine. But when you've got dark numbers, let's say black with a white outline on a red jersey, that's near impossible to make out from the press box. So you do rely on a tighter camera shots. And if a guy's leaning over for the face-off, if you've got similar numbers, like for example, you've got, say, there's Shea Theodore, number 27, and Alec Martinez, number 23. If those two guys are on the ice together, as they often will be, if they're kind of leaning over, a 23 and a 27 can look almost identical from the middle of the jersey up. You need to see the bottom to know that it's a 3 rather than a 7. So you sometimes have to, with different jerseys, know that you can look at the number on the sleeve. Or even in some situations when TV has a very tight shot, you can see the number on the back of a player's helmet.
And numbers on the front of the helmet, I thought was a big switch from tradition when it happened. And now I can't, live without it.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt about it. It sometimes will bother me when I see in other sports, especially in college, they'll design jerseys with a flair for fashion rather than the utilitarian purpose of their intent, identifying who the players are. We kind of tend to forget that the idea behind numbers and even names on these jerseys is so everybody knows who they are. I guess maybe in subsports like basketball, you can recognize the players' faces. But even in college, you don't really know the guys' faces. But, hey, they've got the cool jersey, so I want to go to that school. Not to get off on another tangent, but you get the idea. I think the NHL has done a good job of making sure that at least the size of the numerals is rather consistent. I'd love for them to step in when, say, the Flyers want to put black numbers on orange jerseys. Those are rough, too.
Dan will not be hanging out with Matt Brady and Zach in our design team anytime soon.
No, we want either white numbers on a dark jersey or very dark numbers on a very light jersey.
We have some power play work. You're watching by the Next Gen camera, Summerlin Hospital Rink here at City National Arena, Training Camp 2.0 in July, getting set for the return to play as the Western Conference will head to Edmonton. The Eastern Conference will play out of Toronto. 1 week from today, Golden Knights will be settling into Edmonton at that hub city. Do you want to call a bit of this power play?
We could try that. Peyton Krebs was on the left half wall there down near the corner. He's wearing number 18, and defenseman Dylan Coughlin wearing 52. He's skating off. So you had some of those depth guys getting a crack at the power play, and now you're going to bring it back, thankfully, to this end of the ice. so we can see a little bit better. And power play unit, Paul Stastny is the center, Pacioretty on the right. And let's see who comes out on the penalty kill. There's Jimmy Schultz for defense. And then, as you can see, like some of the players who are out near the line are out of frame. And if it's out of frame, I don't know who it is. So there's Shea Theodore. So he's going to quarterback the power play and bring it all the way back behind his own net. So you got Stone up front. You've got Stastny, and now here comes Jonathan Marchessault into the middle for Stone, and his shot stopped by Fleury, and back the other way comes the shorthanded white team. Reed Duke navigating through the left side and gets tripped up. And that's the trick of it. When the play is in the foreground, is the camera zoomed out enough? Is it wide enough to see everybody? Whereas at the other end of the ice, is it tight enough so that you can read the numbers? There's Jake Bischoff, a defenseman who's been paired with Nick Hague quite a bit in the early going of the scrimmages.
Do you know if you'll have rink sounds piped into your radio broadcast? I'm sure you will.
Yeah, we had a call with some folks at the NHL. It was a Zoom call, and boy, there were dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of people related to radio broadcasts. Some announcers, some engineers, and of course folks from the league. And yes, there is every intention of supplying audio effects, game sounds, to correspond with the video that we also receive. And that's exciting because,
What
to
would you
do
prefer?
it in
Would you like some crowd noise piped in, or just go with the silence with game skates and puck and all that?
I think you'd want at least some fake crowd noise, not to overdo it. I watched ESPN's broadcast of the New York Mets and the New York Yankees last night, and it was not obtrusive. It was a little bit strange because the Mets third baseman had made 2 throwing errors, and then when he finally made a good throw to first base, there was appropriate applause for a regular crowd. But in New York, there would have been an incredibly sarcastic ovation for this error-prone third baseman who had the yips. He couldn't throw the ball to first on a ground ball. So that was totally inauthentic, right? Yeah. It was just nice, polite golf applause for a simple grounder to third. Mets fans would have been all over the guy. So that was strange and again, inauthentic. So I think that if it's done with a huge scale back, yes, just sort of the buzz of an arena would be fine. If there's a goal, you're going to hear the siren, which I think would drown out any fake crowd reaction. But if there's a save, they don't sound a siren for that. So can someone, again, they're utilizing EA Sports for a lot of this stuff, can they properly rate the quality of a goaltender's save? How does that work? Somebody's in a booth. Okay, that save ranked a 7 out of 10, so I'm going to hit the number 7 button, and right. That's the reaction.
It's like the old sitcom laugh track.
Yes,
I got to time it right, and right. If it's a good joke, medium joke.
Yeah, and there's no post production. It's got to be done on the fly. So, and the thing that came to my mind, Darren, in terms of the crowd impact on how I call the game, it's anticipatory. So let's say there's a loose puck that skips out to the neutral zone, and before you know it, there's a 2-on-1 breakaway. So nothing has truly happened yet. There hasn't been a shot or a goal or a save. But the crowd sees the potential. Something's developing, and that's when you hear the anticipatory start to a play. It gets your attention. As much as you might hear it in the play-by-play, you feel it with the crowd. Oh, look, here comes something. And then it's a 2-on-1. Stone to Pacioretty. Back to Stone. He shoots. And then the crowd is all of a sudden goes silent for an instant. Most people don't realize that. Right when there's a shot, it goes in. Right. It's this perfect pregnant pause of silence. And then there's elation, screaming and cheering if it goes in, or, oh, if the goalie makes a save, or if it misses, and so on. So those are the things, not necessarily the outcome of a play, it's the anticipation of a play as it's unfolding that I think I do play off of, especially on the radio when there are no visual elements. It is just a chorus. It's being a radio play-by-play broadcaster is kind of like being a conductor for a symphony. You want the engineer to bring in appropriate effects from the ice, appropriate crowd reaction noise, the PA system, the things that come from the arena sources. Of course, my color commentator, Gary Lawless, and then how I choose to call the game, and then very importantly, when to not speak. And I think a lot of people are thinking that, Dan, shut up, just call the game. Which we try to focus on as much as we can.
Shea Theodore retrieving the puck in his own zone, and they'll take it down to the opposite end, which isn't as far away as Yidis in the Czech Republic or Madison in Nebraska watching today. Tony and Sam in the United Kingdom, Barbara in North Dakota, hello to you, and Drasba1234 on Twitch informs us that it's raining in Henderson. Oh, first time in a while.
I'll tell you, one of the most ominous things that's ever happened to me, that's Riley Smith shanking a shot right there. Smith goes to it back behind the goal. One of the most ominous things when we got back from St. Paul, Minnesota, back in mid-March, we landed in a driving rainstorm. And in the 3 years we've been here with the Golden Knights, maybe we've landed in a drizzle, or maybe the tarmac was wet from an earlier sprinkle of rain, but I don't remember ever walking from the airplane to the parking lot in rain. And my goodness, it must have been some of the hardest rain that I have ever experienced in Las Vegas in 3 years. And I got to the car eventually.
Kind of went with that moment, didn't it?
Yeah, I got into the car. I had my heavier coat because we were in Minnesota after all, and I put it on just to protect myself from the torrential downpour. I dumped my suitcase into the passenger seat of my car. I rushed around, plopped down in the driver's seat, and the rain was just beating down on the car. And I thought, this is not going to turn out well. It was an ominous sign. And that was the last time that we were all together as a team. The regular traveling party, players, coaches, staff, broadcasters, etc., was way back on March 11th. It's amazing that much time has passed, more time than we would normally have in an off season.
We had the cool down show or Knights Report. I can't remember which when we made the transition, but you and I were doing a show, and you pointed out that we were previewing the St. Louis Blues, one of the three opponents that the Vegas Golden Knights will face in the round robin. And you had this unbelievable stat that they've had more time off during this pause than the St. Louis Blues were able to use to recoup and come back to defend their Stanley Cup last summer.
Yeah, it was 113 days, the date of our preview of the Blues since their last actual game, and it was 113 days from their Stanley Cup championship game to the first regular season game the following year. So don't forget, they would have had training camp, preseason games. It was 113 days from Game 7 against Boston to obviously then starting the next regular season. 113 days, and of course it's more than that now. And that amount of time is, I remember Riley Smith said this weeks ago, the amount of time off the ice, it's never been this long since you were probably 7 or 8 years old. They have routines in the summer to be on the ice, even if it's not hard training or team practices, you're still going to be on the ice, after a short break. But the kind of break that most guys had this particular stretch was unlike anything they've had as adults, not since they were, in elementary school.
Hour and 15 minutes into today's practice from City National Arena on the surface of the Summerlin Hospital rink. A Twitch viewer is curious if the Blue Jackets will take their cannon to Toronto for the Eastern Conference.
Oh, no.
I don't believe you're going to get that through customs.
Nah. No.
Anything to declare? Yes, a Civil War cannon. Ever tell you my cannon story?
No, I don't think so.
Doug McLean was the president at the time.
Yeah.
He knew he was on the verge of being let go as president general manager of the Columbus Blue Jackets. So one of the last things he did was approve this super expensive cannon before he was shown out the door. And that's his lasting legacy. He approved the cannon. One, probably more in large part to say, I just cost you money. And,
Sure.
And that's the Canada story that they sound off after every goal.
It's pretty neat. You can YouTube or Google the story behind it, and it's a legit replica of what they would have used in the Civil War, and the charge that goes into it, and the sound that it would create if it were actually fired is much louder than the sound that you hear. It's really quite interesting. I looked into it.
I did the All-Star game there a couple of years ago.
Oh, no.
Wow.
Do you have earplugs?
Yeah, I was like, geez.
I felt so bad.
I thought
for
they were going to
Dave.
run out of ammo.
Yeah, I felt we were there. I forget if it was last year or the year before, and they fired the thing off at the end of warm-ups, not only after goals. And in Columbus, the broadcast booths are separated by glass panes, so you can see into the neighboring booth. And I saw Dave Gosher get up from his chair, turn away from the ice, and was going to sip a cup of coffee. And it was like watching a train wreck about to happen. You couldn't do anything, but you knew that as the clock would hit 000, they were going to fire this cannon off. And I swear it was almost synchronous as Dave went to go sip from the coffee, and right before the cup touched his lips, bang! And you could see, thankfully, Dave, he's very dexterous. Is that the right word? He's got dexterity. So he didn't spill it, but you could see in his eyes he was kind of upset. And he had almost spilled coffee on his fancy suit because of the cannon. He recovered quickly, though.
If you could have warned them, would you? Or did you enjoy what you were seeing so much and the potential of disaster? Would you have let it go? That's the question. It's easy to say you couldn't, so you didn't do anything.
Yeah, I think it would have been funny. I don't know if Dave travels with an extra suit and tie and stuff. He wheels around this suitcase that he has. It's a briefcase, but it's on wheels. I don't know what he keeps in there, so maybe he's got an extra outfit.
Yeah, I'm with you on that because it's not large by any standards.
I've got a briefcase I throw over my shoulder. Shane's got a backpack. Gary's got a thing with two handles. I don't know what to call it properly. But,
Dresser?
What's that?
A dresser?
It might be called a Merce. I'm not sure.
The Next Gen camera bringing you this live stream of practice continuing on this Sunday morning from City National Arena, the Summerlin Hospital rink. Working on the power play and the penalty kill. Should also thank Dan before we get sign off the air. But thank you for all the work that you're doing on the VGK Daily podcast. You are putting
thank you.
You are putting that to air because of just technical limitations on the rest of us. But you do the SLG&D podcast, and not only are on that, but you are the brains behind getting it to air. And people should know that you make sure that all happens, and we appreciate everything. You will be on tomorrow's episode of the Daily, so thank you in advance. I don't know whether you know that, but I'm booking you in.
Well, I think it's great, and there are so many folks, and you see and hear some of us, but there are so many people that are working behind the scenes for these live video broadcasts, and the production side of things, the public relations side of things. It is amazing. And like social media is in a place that I never imagined it could be, yet the folks here come up with something new, it seems, every week or every time we have a conference call. And this VGK Daily podcast, something for you, Darren, that it's been fun to hear you chat with Stormy, with Gary, with Dave yesterday, the episode that we heard this morning. And it's great. It's a great way to start your day. And if you subscribe on, for instance, the Apple podcast or any of the other providers, it comes right to your phone. And it gets published overnight, so when you wake up in the morning, boom, it's right there. You wake up, you hit the button, and then you hear Darren introduce the show. It's fantastic.
Stormy likes it because there's not many podcasts on the weekend, so she had something to listen to this weekend. And your comment on social media and the strides that it's made is well-timed because we have a check-in right now from Tony and Kathy.
Oh, no.
Yes.
I wonder what they're up to.
Tony and Kathy watching from Tinton Falls,
there you go.
New Jersey.
Down the shore where everything's all right. Stone's throw from Springsteen's house. Go play golf or something. Go to the beach.
tell everybody who Tony and Kathy are?
Tony and Kathy are Dan's mom and dad back in the great state of New Jersey. I'm sure they've got more important things to do, but
I don't think so.
No, apparently not.
This is no, and I don't mean that as a shot. That came out wrong. I mean, this is awesome. Having you back talking hockey, explaining the process that you go through to prepare a game and call a game, and then not only that, but the actual content that we're watching on the ice right now. It's remarkable that we've made such big strides in a week into Phase 3, that we're now getting into such detailed work via the Next Gen camera. Watching over the Summerlin Hospital rink here at City National Arena, it's big steps over a short period of time.
And I love how we can look forward to additional data from the National Hockey League. They have introduced, with some of the all-star games, putting the microchip in the puck, putting the microchip in the jersey, shoulder pads, and we were expecting that to roll in for this year's Stanley Cup Playoffs. Because of the pandemic and the pause, they are putting that off. But when we talk about the next step, and social media is a big part of that, but we talk about the analytics, the data, what goes into a manager's decision or a coach's decision, matchups and so on, and sort of quantifying what makes somebody a next level player or a guy on the bubble who might not get a new contract. That data is coming, and I can't wait to see how that impacts everything that we do, how that impacts the social media end of things, because at the same time as all of this new stuff is amazing, we also don't want to overdo it. I don't think we want to water it down. I think we want to pull out the most interesting stuff, and as broadcasters, as storytellers, deliver it to you in a way that is meaningful, that you can actually draw some insight. And time on ice was one of those things in transitioning from the American League to the National Hockey League for me. Time on ice data is kept by teams in the American League, but it's not publicly published. So it was not something that on a broadcast you would be able to refer to. Meanwhile, how often with the Golden Knights are we discussing how much ice time a player gets? I remember thinking about Mark Stone, how his minutes decreased from Ottawa to Vegas because he didn't have to play 25 minutes a night. The Golden Knights have so much balance. The Knights' fourth line generally plays several more minutes than other team fourth lines. That kind of data is just a little snippet that I think we'll get more of that kind of stuff as the microchips become prevalent in the new data that we'll eventually be getting.
Do you think we'll get to a sweet spot, whether it be 5, 10 years, or how long do you think it'll take before we find out what that optimal number is?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think of, for instance, if you were to work a basketball game, they'd have stat monitors courtside. And the data on there is data that, sure, you could find on the internet. It's not plastered on your TV screen, but it's there so that an announcer or a producer or a font operator, graphics person can be an editor and pull out what's meaningful here. In other words, I'm concerned that we're going to have so much stuff we're going to want to give it to the fans all at once, and it's not going to be useful.
I'm laughing because they're just doing a little wind-down drill in front, and the one-timer to the slot for Jonathan Marchessault, it's right over the right ear of Marc-Andre Fleury and off the glass. So they're working on a couple of drills just to the end of practice as things wind down. Lori wants to know, whom is more excited, the players or the fans? And I dare say, most times I would say the fans.
Yeah.
In this case, I've been really impressed, and it's jumped out at me how pumped the players are and how effusive they are about this could be the best Stanley Cup playoffs ever, because health and coming off the layoff and the pent-up energy.
I think it's new. It's different. And when you have been going through hockey season after hockey season your whole life, the motivation is to win a championship. Or if you're at a younger age, to make the best impression on a scout or a manager so that you can move up, whether that's from amateur to pro or from minor league to major league. This is unlike any postseason tournament any of these players have been a part of. So I think there's a special attraction to something that's different. And God willing, there's nothing like this ever again when you have 150 days between the regular season and the postseason. So I think that for the teams who feel they've got a legitimate shot at this, who have been putting the effort in, these many months, there's got to be some real motivation behind this, some real, genuine interest in going the distance. I can imagine on the other side of it, if you're one of those teams who snuck in just barely, that perhaps you weren't doing the same kind of things to stay in shape, to be ready to be part of a postseason because you thought you were out of the playoffs. You might have already shut it down in March, for some of these clubs. Can you get back into gear? Maybe a handful of guys on your team can, but does the whole team? I think that's the difference here, Darren. I think that the entire team here, from the moment the pause happened, was thinking, whenever we get back going again, we are playing so well, and the team was doing so well back in March, that we've got a legitimate shot. And they have taken the steps, it seems to me, from top to bottom. Mark Stone setting the example. We've heard him chat about it just in the last few days. I think that the tone that he has set for this entire club, and Pete DeBoer has echoed this, they're moving faster through these preparations than anticipated because the team has been in such good shape collectively.
Again, not many goals scored. The goaltenders have been absolutely dialed in.
Yeah, I was hoping they would do a full-on scrimmage there so I could get into the real play-by-play. It's hard to do play-by-play of drills, which is why I kind of didn't go for it there. When you're just doing power play practice, that's not really play-by-play.
Oscar Dance now in goal.
Yeah. So the other day when they got into a true scrimmage, they had done some drills, and then they kind of reset and they did a full-on scrimmage back and forth with, and when we talk about it, scrimmage, I'm talking about the coaches turn themselves into officials. They're calling offside, they're calling penalties, though we didn't see any. When they're calling it like an actual game and there's face-offs, and then it's, to me, a real scrimmage. What we saw here in the last little while was not a true scrimmage. They were, going through the motions of some power play and penalty kill stuff, which is very important, but not exactly what we might have hoped for in terms of the play-by-play angle.
It's a wave, right? At the start, they scrimmaged a lot Monday, Tuesday, and now into much more detailed work over the last couple of days. And I would think late in second week, we'll see another turn towards scrimmages and more long-form scrimmages to get into that rhythm.
I would think so. And I would imagine that the scrimmage action that we've seen in the last several days was as much to get the players' juices flowing. Practice is practice. It's important, but it is not why we become athletes. Or I should say, why they became athletes. My athletic career is long since past. So for these guys, they want to go and just play a game. They're going to implement some of the stuff that's been worked on with the structure and the tweaks, but you want to just get it flowing, get into a normal feel for hockey. It's like if you're trying to play the piano and you're just doing, scales and nothing else. No, you want to play a full song. How about that interaction there, Darren, with Peyton Krebs?
Paul Stastny, Krebs is living with Mark Stone, so under the tutelage there, and then Paul Stastny.
It's amazing how many players have put themselves in a position to aid the young guys. Marvelous blend of perspectives, experiences, and ages when it comes to the Knights roster composition. And whether, I think that the big discussion we had early this year was Paul Stastny and Cody Glass, and how much Cody was learning from Paul Stastny. He was trying to soak in all of that, the finer points of a face-off or where to be. I remember Max Pacioretty talking about Cody Glass and making that pass, knowing that Pacioretty would be there, but also
is that the no-looker?
But, I think this was more general. I think it was even before that, where there was a maturity for Cody Glass that he knew where to put the puck, but also knew, even if the play called for it, and Pacioretty's Pacioretty, still wise enough not to force it. So you're hearing from the Stastnys, the Paciorettys, the Stones, and Stone's not in his 30s yet. I mean, let's not go crazy. I mean, Stastny is the most veteran. He'll be turning 35 later this year. But, there's still that veteran guy to younger guy mentorship that's going on. And to be a fly on the wall there, Marc-Andre Fleury, Paul Stastny, modern hockey royalty, and here's 19-year-old Peyton Krebs.
And who's doing all the talking? The two veterans.
That's right. No, if Peyton is as smart as we think that he is, he's got his ears tuned up right now. I'd love to hear what they're talking about. and it's so important, not only what are they saying, but how they're saying it. What you hear from the young players, it's not just and we're inclined to ask, what did Paul Stastny tell you about taking a face-off? Sure, that's all fine and good. But I think it's how to carry yourself, when it's appropriate to do this, when it's not appropriate to do that. Things as simple as picking pucks off the ice. And I think for Cody Glass and Nick Hague earlier this year, in the minor leagues, you're often in a position where the young guys, the rookies, at the end of a practice, those are the guys who stay on the ice longer, and they pick up the pucks. They are expected to be the last ones off the ice. If you're the new guy, you can't go off the ice before Paul Stastny. But the coaches, in particular, this conversation was with Ryan McGill and Nick Hague. You don't have to be the last one on the ice. You don't have to be the guy picking up the pucks at the end of practice. This is the National Hockey League, and you deserve to be here. Those kinds of things, those lessons, it's not just hockey lessons for Hague and Whitecloud and Glass and Krebs and the rest. It's just day-to-day conduct. It's those nuances that help these young players blossom. At least Golden Knights hope that they blossom. They're certainly on their way.
Our crew has done such an extraordinary job this week. You mentioned a player. We have the shot of that player right away. It's awesome. So tomorrow I want to play a game that we're just going to start randomly throwing out guys' names and seeing how long it takes to bring them on. But it's been awesome, how quickly it is, and the pictures going with the words and words going with pictures. It's been a lot of fun in this live stream.
What's the most fun for you in watching these practices go?
Communication. How much communication, it's a great reminder, happens during the course of a practice and scrimmages between the players themselves. Where we watch from, there's so much going into a broadcast, so you don't often are able to eavesdrop on that and get an idea. So that's a great reminder to me, just the back and forth between all the players and the coaching staff.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great point, because when you're trying to figure out a new scenario you've never been through before, I don't want to over-communicate, but let's figure out the appropriate times to, all right, let's do this, let's do that, and then we'll talk about it. All right, here's what we're going to do next. Let's talk about it. Whereas to not wear you down. I think that, we were talking earlier about Zach Whitecloud. He's the sponge to soak it all in. But at the same time, you want to kind of tap the brakes a little bit too. So I think communication is so critical, but knowing the sweet spot of how to communicate, when to communicate, and not just talking, right? We think of communication as when to talk, listening. Oh my goodness. We just saw it there with Peyton Krebs listening to Stastny and Fleury. But, the coaches spend so much time in preparing, and they've got a book on all of the Golden Knights' potential opponents, the video that's available now. They're mini presentations. It's like they're making a marketing pitch every time. Okay, here's the St. Louis Blues. And then they talk to the players in these small groups. You can't just go through those sessions like you're watching a TV show. I mean, you've got to buy into that. We're so inclined with our phones now. We're just consumers. Everything comes to us, and we're almost passive in that consuming. But when you're in these situations, you've got to be an active participant in these sessions. I would love to be in those rooms, too, to hear the conversations between the coaches and the players, whether it's part of the game or a particular opponent. That kind of stuff fascinates me.
This has been great. Really appreciate your time, as always, leaning on both your experiences and knowledge of what's happening and your analysis of this game. We'll tap the brakes a little bit right now, and
yeah,
we'll come
I think
back.
we need to with all this paper stuff in front of me. Did you get enough of all that? We talked about play-by-play more than we actually did play-by-play.
That's fine, because that's the joy of this stream right now, is being able to use this platform to talk about all kinds of different things. And we'll continue to do that tomorrow with the training camp bulletin from City National Arena and the Star Nursery and the Summerlin Hospital rinks as the Vegas Golden Knights continue training camp 2.0. Vegas VGK Daily, the podcast, will also be in your inbox tomorrow morning. Dan Duva will be the guest on that podcast. You'll hear from the players, from the media availability, just the latest happenings around Vegas Golden Knights training camp. But for right now, we have to say goodbye. On behalf of Stormy Buonantony and Dan Duva, I'm Darren Millard. Thanks for watching. To all the viewers on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, really appreciate it. Continue to subscribe and send us your questions, comments. We'll get them right out of the gate tomorrow as we start week 2 of Training Camp 2.0 and the road to Edmonton and the return to play for the Stanley Cup Playoffs.